You know what I'm saying? This is a rainy day. How many rainy days can we have in a row? Like, for real. I had to put myself on a tropical island. I apologize. Alright, so today's going to be a short one. We're going to kind of be wrapping up Vietnam a little bit. I wish you all could come with me on this wonderful tropical island experience. Hi, Derek. You're tired? I'm tired, Vicky. Oh, my lord. Like, waking up at 9 a.m. seems impossible nowadays when I used to do it literally every day of my life before this whole quarantine business happened. Like, even on weekends, I would wake up at, like, 7 o'clock because I was so used to waking up for school that now, like, I can't even get up at 9 o'clock. I'm like, ugh, it's a mess. Like, my entire sleep pattern is destroyed from this. Trust me, Mr. Vulture, you don't want to be on an island with you. Why not? What does that mean, James? I'm a little confused by that. What's so bad about being on an island with me? I don't get it. I do illegal things. All right. Let's tap it down a little bit. Let's slow down. We don't need to confess to doing criminal activity on my live stream. I appreciate it though. Oh, this chair is destroying my back too. Oh, yeah. So there's that. James, say one of your friendship destroying sentences. Is that like a thing that James does? That's confusing to me. I can't find anyone with a face as horrible as yours. Well, thank you, James. I appreciate that. This face? Are you talking about this face? Right here? Jimmy, if you want to be on an island, yeah, well, Kyle wants to be on an island because of Survivor, so he probably would like to live on an island. Alright, so today's going to be a quick little lesson. We're going to be wrapping up things. We're going to be talking about collaborate, resist, and doing nothing with the anti-war movement. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to shut down the chat, I think, or at least slow it down. Let's slow down this chat. There we go. Chat is now in slow mode. Fix some of these wires. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to... Alright, so today what we're going to do... Oh, I have to fix this, don't I? You can't even see it. Alright, here we go. Ready? I got an idea here. You can get fancy, right? You ready to get fancy? You guys ready to get fancy with me? Alright, we want video capture. No, I don't want that. I want window capture, right? No, display capture. Let's go to display capture. We're going to go, boop. We're going to change this to that. Just bear with me a second, fellas. Here we go. Let's crop it down, right? Because you get too many Mr. Vultures here. There's 1,000 Mr. Vultures here. So we're going to crop this down. No, I didn't want to do that. No, I think I could do. Hold on. That's pretty close. There, how's that? Let's go bottom up. We'll go bottom 200. And top, let's go top 500. That's not the top. Boom, there we go. Now I got my screen here. How's that look? Does that look good? Let's make this a little bigger though, huh? And let's move me over. More. Ta-da! How's that look? All right. So today, what we're going to be doing? I haven't even looked at the chat yet. Let me take a look at the chat. How's the chat going? This is an outrage. Why, Derek? What's going on? I haven't been looking. All right. So here's what we're going to do today. You ready? We're going to be analyzing resistance. How's the music, by the way? Is it too loud? I feel like it probably is, right? Music's a little loud. The only Nearpod was Wednesday's Nearpod. Someone let me know if the music's too loud. Here we go. It's good. All right, here we go. We're getting teaching here. All right, so analyzing resistance, collaboration, and neutrality in the Vietnam War era. All right, so we're getting towards the end of teaching about Vietnam. So I just kind of want to focus on a little bit more specific details and topics that have to do with Vietnam. So here we go. You ready? So this are our directions. The Vietnam War era was one of the most tumultuous times in American history. It was the first war that truly divided the nation and saw countless protest movements rise up against Americans' involvement in Vietnam. One of the reasons for this, though, is because it was the first time that war was actually being filmed and put on live TV, home for Americans to watch. At the same time, many Americans supported the war and saw that it was as the U.S. standing up against communism and helping oppressed people, right? You're going to analyze several key events. We're going to analyze several key events during the Vietnam War. For each one, we have to decide, are we going to resist, collaborate, or act and do nothing? And so what I'm going to do is there's a bunch of different events. We're going to talk about each event, and then we're going to talk about whether people would resist, collaborate, like try to help the American government, or just sit there and do nothing. And that's what today is. And so there's several events that we're going to cover today. And that's kind of what we're doing it. Now, if you choose to resist, you're joining those protesting. So Derek in chat, Steven in chat, Alex in chat, James, Didi in chat. If you remember these definitions for me, right? If we resist, we're protesting the Vietnam War. If we collaborate, that means we are supporting the American war effort in Vietnam. And finally, if we do nothing, obviously that means we do nothing. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. All right, here we go. We're going to skip all this. That'll be a worksheet we would have done in school, but we're not in school. All right. So first thing we're going to talk about is the American deaths in Vietnam. In 1955, America began sending military advisors to South Vietnam to help prevent a communist takeover by the North Vietnamese government, which sought to unify Vietnam under one communist government. On July 8, 1959, two military advisors, Major Dale Ruiz and Sergeant Chester Onavad, were killed by Viet Minh guerrilla soldiers in a raid at the Bien Ho in South Vietnam. These were the first American deaths reported in Vietnam's conflict. So, decision. Would you join the resistance and protest the U.S. involvement? So now these two ambassadors, right? These two advisors went over there and they got killed. And people were like, this is why we shouldn't be in Vietnam. So if you want to resist, this would be like, we're sending people to help South Vietnam on the other side of the world. And now America wants to send more people because two advisors got killed. And if two advisors get killed, that's where America usually wants to go to war. When Americans get killed, we feel like we're right to go to war. And so if you resist, you want to look at this as an example why America should stay out of Vietnam, right? We send people to Vietnam, they die. If you want to collaborate, you want to say, well, 2 Americans just got killed in Vietnam. We need to send more soldiers to Vietnam. A, to protect the other advisors we have there, and B, to make the, you can't just kill Americans and get away with it. And so these two, this sergeant and this major who got killed really became like this first, in 1959, it was like this first political thing that happened in America because, a lot of people were like, well, America, you're dumb. You shouldn't have sent these 2 guys to advise in this foreign country where we knew war was going to happen. Other people are like, North Vietnam can't kill 2 Americans and get away with it. So would you resist this or would you collaborate this? Would you be against sending more people to Vietnam because this is an example of what would happen? Or do you feel like you're kind of cool with it? What do you think? Let's see. But they wanted to fight. Well, the government, we're talking about people, right? Derek Mayer said they wanted to fight because of the domino theory. You're right, Derek. They wanted to fight because the government, the United States government, wanted to fight the war because of the domino theory. But average Americans like you and me living on Long Island, we didn't really care about the domino theory. We're much more interested in the lives of fellow Americans. So, Allie, you want to protest this. You're saying like, hey, if you send people to a faraway land where war is about to happen, you cannot be surprised if they die. So America should stay out of war. I like it. All right, let's go to the next topic. Let's go right in. They get better. All right. The Thich Quang Doc burns himself to death. This one is crazy. This one is one of the more famous ones. Do we have music going on? I don't hear it. Ooh. I do hear it. All right. On June 11th, 1963, a South Vietnamese Buddhist monk named Thich Quang Doc set himself on fire at a busy intersection in Saigon to protest the South Vietnamese government's treatment of Buddhists. At the time, Buddhists made up about 80% of South Vietnam. However, its president, Ngo Dinh Diem, was Catholic and enacted discriminatory favoring Catholics for public service and military promotions, as well as in the allocation of land, business arrangements, and tax concessions. So the South Vietnamese, because of their French colonists, or their roots, right? Remember, it used to be a French colony? They are supporting Catholics, and they are not supporting Buddhists. In fact, they seem to be oppressing the Buddhists. In May 1963, Buddhists were banned from flying their flag during a holiday and during a protest of the ban. Government forces fired into a crowd, killing 9 people. President Diem blamed the Viet Cong, so he blamed the North Vietnamese. On June 11th, about 350 monks and nuns marched with banners printed in both English and Vietnamese. They denounced the Diem government and its policy towards Buddhists, demanding that it fulfill its promises of religious equality. John F. Kennedy said about a photograph of the Buddhist on fire, "No news picture in history has generated so much emotion around the world as that one." And so right here is an actual photograph. That's an actual, I know it's small on the screen, but that is an actual photograph of the guy lighting himself on fire. That's real. So the question is this: would you resist the United States getting involved in Vietnam? I mean, we're back to the same question, right? Would you resist the United States getting involved in Vietnam? Think about it. The South Vietnamese, we're there to help the South Vietnamese and stop the North Vietnamese. But the South Vietnamese are almost at war with themselves because you have Buddhist South Vietnamese who are being oppressed. You have Catholic South Vietnamese who are being treated with favor, and they're fighting amongst each other. Forget about the North Vietnamese and the communists. So is this just too much of a mess for the United States to get involved in, and would you resist that? Or would you support the United States government saying that these people need our help, right? President Diem shouldn't be oppressing his people, and that's why the United States should go there and help the president realize what true freedom is, right? Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, things like this. So would you resist it? Let's see what the chat is saying. Or would you kind of say America needs to go to Vietnam and help these people? Christian, please stay on topic, sir. What do we got? Derek, you would resist probably. Delaney, you would send more people. let's go to a heart-to-heart. I think we need a heart-to-heart here. All right. Listen, guys. The truth is this. Like, let's seriously get on a heart-to-heart. Okay. The truth is, when I went to Iraq, it was crazy because I went all the way around the world. We're in Iraq, and a lot of people could argue that there was no reason the United States should have been there. They said we had weapons of mass destruction. It turned out we did not have weapons of mass destruction. And so really the United States, some people would argue the United States didn't belong to be there. At the same time, I personally saw how we definitely did help certain people over there. There were people who were being oppressed by their government and Saddam Hussein. There were people who were living in squalor. They couldn't feed themselves. They were being tortured by, different terrorist groups over there. And the United States going there and giving these people some type of foundation definitely did help a portion of their population. And so I get a mixed idea when it's like, should it be America's job to help people who need help around the world, or should we mind our own business? And that's a question that you kind of have to think for yourself. Obviously, you and your families might have your own opinions on that, but I can say you can't just say America goes over to Iraq and just hurts people, and you can't say America goes over to Vietnam and hurts people. We definitely help people too. We definitely hurt people, right? Obviously, it's war, but that's the decision really we're kind of getting stuck on here, and we have to think about. And I'm back. All right, moving on to the next one. Here we go. So this Buddhist monk, right? Who knew that Buddhism and Catholics were having so much problems in Vietnam, right? All right, Gulf of Tonkin resolution. On August 2nd and 4th, 1964, 2 U.S. Navy ships were stationed in the Gulf of Tonkin. That's the sea next to China and Vietnam, a body of water adjacent to Vietnam. They reported being fired upon by North Vietnamese patrol boats. In response, President Lyndon B. Johnson requested permission from Congress to increase America's military presence in Vietnam. On August 7, 1964, Congress passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, authorizing the president to take any measures necessary to retaliate and promote peace and security in Southeast Asia. So, would you join the resistance? Would you resist America getting more involved in Vietnam? Lyndon B. Johnson has just asked Congress to give him power of war in Vietnam because he says that these North Vietnamese boats opened fire on our boats. People who would resist this would say, wait a minute, why are American Navy ships over there anyway? These people are about to have a civil war, North Vietnam and South Vietnam about to have a civil war, and we park our Navy ships right off the coast and we're shocked that we got shot at. Other people would say, we're there to try to create stability in the region, and if a country shoots at us, we should retaliate. Like, America shouldn't allow people to just shoot at us and get away with it. So the question is, do we collaborate with Lyndon B. Johnson and agree that we need to send more presence to Vietnam in 1964? Or do we resist this and say, duh, if you're going to send American soldiers over to the war theater, don't be shocked if they get shot at? So do we resist this or do we collaborate? By the way, in real history, most Americans fell in the middle, meaning that the older generation, the World War II generation, supported the war and supported involvement. They would collaborate. And the younger generation, the 18-year-olds graduating from high school and growing up in the 1960s, right, listening to rock music and things like that, they tended to resist. So there was a clear generational divide between whether you resisted or you collaborated. All right, next one. Public opinions of the war dips. Public support for the Vietnam War decreased as the war raged on throughout the 60s and beginning part of the 1970s. William L. Lunch and Peter W. Spurlich collected public data opinion data measuring support for the war from 1965 to 1971. Support for the war was measured by a negative response to the question: in view of developments since we entered the fighting in Vietnam, do you think the U.S. made a mistake sending troops to fight in Vietnam? Over 60% of Americans supported involvement when the survey first began in 1965. However, in July 1967, that percentage had dipped below 50%. For the first time, more Americans disagreed with the war than supported it. Now, this is interesting because resist and collaborate. Americans like to have other people agree with them. So as the war became less popular and more people decided to resist, more people resisted. So as it became okay to resist the war, more people resisted the war. And as it became less popular to support the war, less people supported the war. And by the way, this idea still happens today. Think of like President Trump. As more people support President Trump, more people think it's okay to support President Trump. And then as more people disagree with President Trump, more people jump on that bandwagon, right? That's what we call it, and disagree with President Trump. And so it becomes this thing where like a group of American people tend to side with what's popular. Think of sport teams, right? With sport teams, if the Cleveland Cavaliers all of a sudden start winning championships, all of a sudden their fan base grows because you have all these fans that want to be part of a winning team. It's kind of like that. All right, we're going to go ahead. The Tet Offensive. The Tet Offensive was a series of over 100 coordinated attacks by North Vietnamese forces on South Vietnam. The attacks took place on January 30th, 1968, which marked the Vietnamese New Year, known as the Tet. The attacks were intended to spark rebellions in South Vietnam against U.S. forces and encourage the U.S. to scale back its involvement. While the attacks stunned U.S. and South Vietnamese forces, they were able to defend all the areas hit, and relatively few South Vietnamese were inspired to rebel. The offensive... I gotta take a sip. Woo. Here we go. All right. The offensive was a military defeat for North Vietnam. However, it had a profound effect on the American public, which had been led to believe by political and military leaders that the North Vietnamese were being defeated and incapable of launching such an ambitious military operation. So, this further shocking the American public was footage of South Vietnamese officer executing a handcuffed Viet Cong prisoner. So this photograph right here, do you see it? This photograph is, the guy with the gun is a South Vietnamese guy. So he's the American side right here with the gun, and he is executing a North Vietnamese side Viet Cong soldier. And the American public was disgusted by this because they were like, you know, that he's just killing that guy in cold blood. And so this really took the American public more against the Vietnam War. So again, we would have to say, do we, after the Tet Offensive, would we continue to resist, or would we collaborate with the president and say, you know, we need to send more soldiers to Vietnam? Sip of coffee. James Deedy, you're like an expert in all things Vietnam. I'm impressed, sir. All right, we're gonna go. We're gonna keep going because I'm in a rush because I got that meeting. All right, the My Lao massacre. This one is horrible, guys. So here we go. You ready? This one's not good. How's my music? All right. On March 16, 1968, a group of U.S. Army soldiers committed what was later called the most shocking episode of the Vietnam War. In a small village known as My Lai, it is estimated that over 400 men, women, and young children were killed. The massacre only ended after Army helicopter pilot Hugh Thompson landed between the soldiers and the retreating villagers and threatened to open fire if they continued their attack. So a U.S. helicopter pilot landed and threatened to open fire on U.S. Army soldiers if they continued to slaughter the people. Crazy. 3 other U.S. servicemen who tried to stop the massacre and rescued hiding civilians were shunned and denounced as traitors. Army officers covered up the massacre for a year until it was reported in the press in November 1969, sparking outrage across the U.S. The brutality of the My Linh killings and the cover-up fueled anti-war sentiment and further divided the United States over the war. 26 soldiers were charged with criminal offenses, but only platoon leader Lieutenant William Calley was convicted. He was found guilty of killing 22 villagers and given a life sentence, but he served only 3.5 years under house arrest. So, this is one of the worst massacres in United States military history. It's really terrible. There's no way around this. When I was an infantry soldier in the Army, and we would talk about, when I was in Iraq, we would talk about things like the My Lai massacre and how important it was to not be perceived as being brutal towards the public. And, you know, you got to understand the soldiers were filled with frustration. Their friends were being killed by Viet Cong. They blamed the South Vietnamese for supporting the North Vietnamese, and it was a mess. And so they took out their aggression wrongfully and ended up killing all these innocent people. It was a complete disaster, and obviously it's going to have a huge impact on the American public, because the Americans at home who already resist the war are going to be like, this is terrible. We're American soldiers are over there killing innocent people. Obviously that's not the case, right? Most American soldiers were being honorable and doing their job as good soldiers. This was just one small platoon who got carried away, but nevertheless it definitely swayed the American public to resist the war. And it also proved an example as to why we should never have gotten involved. Going back to that Buddhist man who burned himself, right? When the South Vietnamese are fighting amongst themselves, and the North Vietnamese are fighting, trying to introduce communism, and then you have French colonists and you have American soldiers, it's too much of a mess where there's no way America can really win this. It's a mess. Really horrible. The My Lai massacre. So terrible, terrible stuff. Yeah, James Deedy, Full Metal Jacket is an amazing movie, totally rated R, very educational in my opinion. It teaches you not just only what boot camp is like, but it also teaches you like what the war is like. Good stuff. Watch it only with parental permission and on your own time, obviously. All right, we're gonna do 2 more real quick. All right, the Kent State shootings. Protests against the Vietnam War were taking place on college campuses across the U.S. since Richard Nixon was elected president, promising to end the war. The military draft changed to a lottery system in December of 1969 and eliminated some deferments, affecting many college students. Back then, you could get a deferment from the draft if you went to college, which was a shame if you think about it, because only rich kids back then really went to college. So rich kids got deferred while poor kids went to the war. Still, the war still appeared to be winding down by 1970. However, in April of 1970, President Nixon announced the Cambodian campaign, which many Americans saw as an expansion of the war by sending troops into another country. On May 1st, 1970, a protest began at Kent State University in Ohio. The following day, the campus ROTC building was set on fire and the Ohio National Guard arrived. While students were protesting on campus, on May 4th, 29 Ohio National Guardsmen fired onto the crowd, killing 4 students and wounding 9 others. So now you have U.S. National Guard soldiers shooting at American kids on a college campus in Ohio. Obviously, this is going to have massive impact to the it's going to make America look very bad. Again, this happened in 1970. The My Lai massacre was 1969. So, you know, between that fall and winter and the spring of 1970 in May, America, the popularity towards the government and the popularity against the war was just skyrocketing. Very bad. So obviously the resist keeps going up here, right? Less people are collaborating, supporting the president, more people are resisting the war. All right, we're going to do last one here. The Pentagon Papers published. In 1960, a top secret Department of Defense study of America's political and military involvement in Vietnam since 1945 was produced. This came to be known as the Pentagon Papers. Daniel Ellsberg was a military analyst who worked on the study. Initially, he had supported the war, but as the war dragged on, he came to oppose the war and thought the government was lying to the public about the war. He decided that the information contained in the Pentagon Papers should be made public and secretly photocopied portions of it. In March 1971, he gave the copies to the New York Times, which then published a series of scathing articles based on the report's most damning secrets. The papers showed that the Johnson administration systematically lied, not only to the public, but also to Congress. They also revealed that the U.S. had secretly enlarged the scope of its actions in the war with bombings of nearby Cambodia and Laos, coastal raids on North Vietnam, and Marine Corps attacks, none of which were reported to the media. So this is just going to compound the fact that we had the Mei Ling massacre, so American soldiers were killing innocent people. We had the Kent State shooting where American soldiers shot at college students. And now you have evidence that the U.S. government has been lying to the media and the American public. And this all, you could see why the anti-war movement in Vietnam became such a popular, big thing because of these events that happened. 1969, right? November 1969, the Mei Ling massacre. May 4th, 1970, the Kent State shooting. By March 1971, you have the Pentagon Papers being published. It was the perfect storm of events that really led to this huge anti-war movement and really brought public sentiment against Vietnam. So, I'm back. It's good to be back. I gotta be honest with you. All right, let me bring this. Let's bring this. No, I don't want that. There we go. All right, so guys, this is the deal. I know today I went a little quick because I have that meeting I have to go to. I'm now 11 minutes late, but that's okay. It's worth being late for you guys. Basically, your question of the day is going to be very simple. I'm going to ask you to pick one of the topics that I talked about in this video, and that's how I'm going to word the question because I want you to watch this video. So I'm going to say, hey guys, pick one of the topics that I talked about in the video and tell me why you think you would agree with resisting or collaborating. So with this, pick the topic and basically say, I would be against the war because this topic is an example why, or I would support the war because this topic would be example why. So you could show the Buddhists being burned, you could show Kent State massacre, the My Lai massacre, you could show the 2 advisors being killed, you could show, what were the other topics that we covered real quick? The Tet Offensive, you could talk about the public opinion, you could talk about the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. So basically go through this video, pick one of those topics and literally write me a sentence. Super easy, stress-free. You're just gonna say like, hey guys, you're gonna say, hey guy, I got distracted. Reset. You're gonna say, pick one of those topics and say, I would, because of this event, I would be against the war, or because of this event, I would support American involvement in Vietnam. And the reason why I'm being vague is I want you to watch this video. So on your Google Classroom, on the question of the day, I'm going to update it and I'm going to keep it vague. I'm going to say, watch the video, pick a topic, tell me if this topic would sway you to be against the war or for the war. One sentence, keep it simple. I love you guys. I miss you guys. I'm going insane. I did my Choose Your Own Adventure last night. I got to come up with more fun ideas. I don't know. It's like I'm locked in a cave with this rainy weather. I mean, beautiful tropic island. But you guys get what I'm saying. So that's it for today. I hope you all are having, a better time with the rainy weather than I am, because I'm going crazy. And that's it for me. So there you go. That's it. Goodbye then. Goodbye. Have a good day. See you Fridays. Tomorrow's a fun lesson. So it's not really a lesson. We're just going to be hanging out Fridays. I thought Fridays we'll just do like hangout Fridays. So my question of the day from now on is really just going to be questions Monday through Thursday. And then Friday we're just going to hang out and have fun. So that's the thing. I'm going crazy too. Delaney, I'm losing it, man. I'm losing it, Delaney. I'm seriously losing it. Like, I don't even know anymore. Oh. Like, something's got to give. I don't know. This is crazy. Goodbye, monsieur. Bye, guys. Bye.